remember the Moe's bar lab that we did a little while back. So I have that that code base, and you can see there's like a corresponding class, for these different things. So I can probably delete some of these. Yeah, we can delete some of this too. All right. So we can also see, we have this they call this find all method, call this orders method. This find all is not so bad. You can see that it works. If I run the console, Python 3-i console, and then we call like find all bartender cursor, and you look at the bartenders, right? It's kind of cool. Like we have a list of all the bartender instances, and maybe you can start to think about like how this occurs under the hood. Well, if you go to this find all method, what you can see is we just perform a simple select statement, select all from the class dunder table. So if I'm passing through the bartender class, right, then it's like bartenders, I'm guessing, is right, there's a bartender's class name. And then so we perform that select statement, and then we do this build from record method, which I think we had you write in the lab. So the way this works is we get back the tuple from each database record. So it's for which one am I doing? For customer? No, for bartender. Right, it'll probably be like the ID and the name. So you get back, actually, maybe we can even show you it. So you get back the list of columns, right? So it'll be like the ID, the name, maybe it has like the hometown, right? And that's defined in the class.columns. So in this case, it's just the bartender columns and the birth year. And then when we get back a record, we will, zip it together with the values. 1, Bob, whatever. Okay? And then obviously turn that into a dictionary, create a new instance of the class that's passed through, and then after you create the instance, we have this dictionary of the attributes. We can just assign it on that instance. Okay? So let me perhaps show you how we can do this. Let me put a breakpoint here. And I'll take out the find all call, actually. Okay. So we'll do Python 3-i, and then we'll just execute this. So the SQL string will be something like select all from bartenders. Okay, and then what we'll do is execute it and get back cursor.fetch all will be our bartenders, and it'll do bartenders square bracket 0. So this is my first bartender record. Okay. So now what do we want to do? Well, we want to use our build from record. We have this build from record method. And what that does is it takes a bartender, right? And we do build from record, pass through, I think it's the bartender, the class name first and then the record. So we'll do the class name, which is bartender, right? And then we'll take the record itself. So remember, the record is just the tuple. The class name is the class, right? Then we press return here, and it breaks because I called this first bartender record. Okay, and now we're in our method, right? So we're in line 8, and you can see we're right in this breakpoint. So what happened so far was we did class.columns, and remember, class is what? Class is the bartender class, right? Because that's what we passed through right here. So the class.columns gives me the list of columns, and then we just zip this together with the actual record, right? Which is the database record. So that's the list of tuple, the tuple. So we zip that together, do the dict, right? So that creates a dictionary, and then we can do, so we can call this my attributes. And then we'll do class parentheses, and this will be an object. So in this case, class, right, is the bartender. We do class parentheses, that creates an instance of a bartender, right? And now that's my object, so I can give this object, if you look currently, there's nothing on it, but I can give this object the attributes we created earlier. And now we have like a bartender that has, like a name and a hometown and all of the attributes that we got from the record. Okay, so we use this build from record method a lot, right? But it just takes the class, the columns on the class, and then zips it together with the values we get back from the database, creates an instance of the class, and then assigns this dictionary of attributes, right, the key value pairs, on the object dunderdict attribute, okay, and then returns the instance. So we call find all, we select all the records, and then for each record in the database, we call build from record to turn each one of these into an instance. Okay. Cool. All right. So we can see how that works. Let me take out the breakpoint just so it doesn't bother us. Any questions about that so far? Okay. So not bad, right? I can call find all, pass through the object I want, and I think maybe the cursor, and it returns to me a list of instances pretty easily. It's pretty nice. Now let's talk about class methods. Okay, so we have bartenders. The other thing you can see is we also have these orders. What actually would be nice to look at is maybe the drinks. So right, would I take a look at that? I can just do find all, the drink, pass the cursor. This will give me all the drinks, I think, in the database, and there they are. We can look at maybe the first one, .dunderdick, just to get a sense of what this is, egg cream soda. Okay, so now let's start talking about the difference between, right, an instance method and a class method. So for an instance method, this is what we've been working with so far. The method is defined on the instance, and it's for kind of questions you have of a specific object. For example, a question could be like, what is this thing's name? We don't really need a method for that, but we could. You may ask maybe like, what's the price including tax? So to do something like that, we could do def price with tax self, right, and return, let's say, self.price times by times by like 1.15%, right? So there's like 15% tax. Seems kind of high. Say it's like 9%. So, right, so this is on the instance, right? It's specific to a particular drink. That differs from class methods, where we'll be asking questions about the collection of data in our database. Let me take a look at the questions we have. Yes. Drinking in New York for sure. So now, let's take a look at, right, a question on the collection of data. So what would that be? That would be asking a question like, give me the collection of drinks that are expensive. Okay? So, right, or maybe it's better to think of this as a question. What are the drinks that are expensive? So just before we get into how we do this, just notice the difference in the questions. In this case, we already know the drink involved, right? This is like my eggnog. I'm asking a question about the eggnog drink. Here, we don't, we're asking the question, we don't know what drinks we're talking about. So we're asking a question of the collection. And remember, we kind of think about our classes as like the factory, right? As like a car factory. Like if you're going to ask the factory, what are the cars that are expensive, right? You'd ask the factory that. You're not going to ask an individual, Nissan car, what are the cars? Tell me about all the other cars that are expensive. That's not really appropriate. It's more asking the class that question. So for this, what we'll do is we'll first use a decorator called called class method. We have the @ sign that makes it a decorator, and then we can do def, and you can normally you can just write like expensive, probably is what I would do, and then did I do something wrong here? No, I don't think so. And now what will we do? So right, this will be something of the collection. Oh, I also need to put in self. So the class methods also get self. And now we can do something like cursor.execute. And how would this work? Maybe we do like a query. Select all from drinks where the price is greater than some specific price. So we can do, this is SQLite, so we'll use the question mark. And now we'll do the query, and then we'll pass through like a specific price. And we can put the price as like $3. And then cursor, we don't know how many instances are going to be returned, so we'll do cursor.fetch all, and that's my records. And then we could do, we could just return this. What we probably should do is actually do build from record, and do build from record and pass through the. I'm trying to think of the order of it. I think it's the class and then the record, right? Yeah, the class and then the record. So the class in this case will be drink, and then the record will be actually a list of them for a record. In records, right? Return the record. All right, we'll do this for every record returned from the database. So this is, I think this will, select from the collection of drinks where the price is here. Notice there's also a list that's being returned, right? Which kind of further makes it sound like a class method, right? Because it's there's not a particular instance. Then we'll fetch all, get back the records. Then for each one of the records, we'll turn that into an instance, right? This is just a tuple. Did I spell this wrong? I did. Yeah, wow, I really messed up. Let me see. Okay, yeah, let's get into that in a second, Miles. So let's run this. We'll see if this works, and then we can actually break it down. A breakpoint right here. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I will run Python 3-i console.py, and then let's do run drink. This is kind of interesting. We're calling the method. This is a class method. So the object that receives the method call is the class itself, right? We're asking like the factory, the question about expensive drinks, and then you can pass through the cursor, right? And now, we hit our breakpoint, right? And we can see the records. Here they are. Here's everything more than 3, which just seems like is a lot. 8, 7, whatever. And then if we do continue, build from record is not defined. My fault. Sorry. I did notice that. I have to import this from api.lib .orm import build from record. Okay. And then we'll just removed our breakpoint, so we'll just confirm that this works. So I just simply, I'm using this method, but it's defined in my ORM, and I didn't import it. I forgot about doing that. So let's just try this again. And there we go. There's my expensive drinks. So we can call this, this is in my console, expensive drinks. And let's just take a look at one of them, and then call .dunderdict. Just make sure it looks okay. So yeah, here's the ID, right? Price is 5. It's non-alcoholic. So again, right, like you can ask questions of the collection. Okay, so there was a really good question about what is self in this case. Let's put a breakpoint here. Let's put a breakpoint here as well. Okay, so self is always going to be the object to the left of the dot. So what do I mean? How do you call this method? Right, it's a class method. You call drink, capital drink, dot expensive. Right, and you pass through the cursor. Notice we don't pass through self, obviously, that's implicit. And we said self is always whatever's to the left of the dot. So that means it's the class drink, right? This is the object. Classes are objects themselves. This is the object that receives the method call. So when we call drink.expensive, pass through the cursor, and now here I am inside the method, line 19. I can take a look at what self is. You see that self is capital drink, is the drink class. This looks a little funny seeing this, but it works exactly the same way. If you just type self here, you can like create a new drink by putting parentheses on the end of it. You see that? It's created a new drink object. So this is drink object. This does not say drink object, right? It says class drink. So inside a class method, self is always going to be the class. And right, the way I kind of figure out what self is by like just looking up, you know. So if I'm like calling this method expensive, I just scroll up. Okay, it's either going to be an instance of a drink or the class drink itself. Because it's a class method, it's going to be, you know, that class drink. If you call, if you say, let me, it's actually going to be a little hard. Let me do continue here. Okay, so this gives me back the drinks. Let me call it one more time and assign the result. So these are my, you know, pricey drinks. And then we'll just continue. And now here's my pricey drinks. And we'll just do the first one. I'm back.
It doesn't really matter because it's just a matter of convention. As long as you know what you're doing. I thought I would be able to inject that while he was gone.
Yeah, if self represents an individual object, is there an equivalent keyword to reference the parent class? You can look at the class of an object in Python. So this is like an instance. I think you can you just call is it dot class or dot dunder class or something like that? Yeah, you see that? So you can get the class of an instance, and that returns to me this, right? And like I said, you can kind of just put parentheses on this, and now I just created a new class, a drink object that way. So this thing looks different, right? Like, but this is the drink class right here. You can do everything with it that you wanted to, and then you can just like ask what this class is probably too, which is the type, like it is like a type, you know, the same way a string is a type, you know, things like that, right? So you can kind of just keep going up the chain to see what they are. Okay. Okay. So the other thing I was about to show was. Yeah, we have these drinks. You know, this is a particular drink, right? This is an instance, just to hammer that home, right? You can see it's a milkshake, right? And now we ask a question of the instance, right? So this kind of makes sense. First of all, just the way it's defined, there's no class method. By default, it's an instance. And then I call drink dot price with tax, and put the parentheses, hit the breakpoint. What's self? Self is the drink instance. So self is always whatever's to the left of the dot. You know, you can also, like I said, look at the method where it's defined. Just look up. Cool, it's a drink instance, right? Because we didn't wrap it in class method. Cool. Yeah, you can call this. I guess the question was, should we be using self or class here? either one works. Maybe there, that's fair if there's a preference. But it's just an argument to a method, right? So you can put in the word self here and just know that self is the class. Or if you want to type in CLS, that's totally fine too. And then, everywhere you have drink, you could just put the words class, right? This references the class. All right. By the way, just notice where you're not using CLASS because typically this is a keyword, right? So that's why we're not doing that, right? How's it a keyword? Right here. Cool. This is used to define a class. All right, so that's class method. So a couple things just to review class methods. One, how do you define it? Just decorate it, right? We have a decorator called class method. Two, when do you use them? When you have questions about the collection, right? Here we don't know what individual drink we're referring to. We're asking the collection of drinks. What are the expensive ones? It doesn't. Here it happens to return a collection. It doesn't have to. Like for instance, most expensive would also be a class method. Why? Because we don't know. Right? If we're asking the question, we don't know which of the drinks is most expensive. And we'll ask that question of the collection. So this again would be a class method. Let me just check the chat again. Static. I'd have to look at static. The question is about static method. I'll have to look for that. I think that might be a relatively new thing. Price with tax will return all drinks and their prices with tax then. Well, really, price with tax is an instance method, So what you could do, if you wanted to, was you could just remember, if you wanted, you could call this on the collection, right? So you can do something like find all, pass through, I think the drink and the cursor. These will be my drinks. Oh, sorry, I need to import find all. Didn't I have find all? Let me just check this out. Python 3 console.py find all. Yeah, there we go. The drink and the cursor. So these are my drinks. And then, these are my list of drinks. And what you could do is you could say, for drink in drinks, call drink dot price with tax. And this actually will work, right? It will call self.price on each individual drink and then multiply it. So I think we'd be good. For drink and drinks, price with tax, parentheses. And that will, give me, you probably want to clean this up by rounding it or whatever. But, you can do that. Right? And you can, if you wanted to do it on the collection, you could have a class method that maybe does this on all drinks. So all drinks with their taxes or something. Cool. All right. Maybe one more thing. So let's say we have, let's do it with bartender. Yeah, okay, you can kind of see it here. We'll do it with bartender. Let's say we want to get all of the bartender's orders, right? And this is all orders a particular bartender was involved with. Okay? So let's make sure we understand what I'm asking. So if we have, let's do find all on bartenders. Okay, so we have a list of bartenders, and then we'll get the first one. Let's find out who this is. This is Mo. Cool. Okay, so this is Mo. And now we're going to ask Mo, we were going to write a method, right? Mo.orders, and probably pass through the cursor. So this is an instance method, right? It's returning a collection of orders, but it's you're asking, who are you asking the question of? We're asking the question of Mo, Mo, tell me all of your orders. This is not generic to all bartenders, right? The answer is particular to this bartender. So this would be an instance method we're writing, and it would be def orders, and we're going to need access to the database, so I'll do self cursor, and now we'll start to write out the query. So for me, the way I do this, so we'll do cursor dot execute, the query, and then maybe there's something we pass through, and then we'll do cursor dot fetch all, and we can just return that for now. Okay, so what is this query going to be? So for me, I like thinking about, well, what's the return value? I want to get back. We want to get back orders. So let's start with select all from orders. And now, which orders are we going to want to get back? Only those associated with Mo, right? So remember, my orders, I know it's been a little while. If you think about the orders table, let's take a look at it. This has the ID. An order is like an order from a customer of a drink from a bartender. Okay? So which orders do we want? We want all the orders associated with that bartender. So select all from orders where orders.bartender ID equals, and now you got to think about, okay, which what is the ID that we want? In this case, would be Mo's ID. So how do we reference Mo from here? Always look at whatever I'm highlighting, right? It's from self, okay? So just think about it. Like, you look up, right? We see that this is a bartender instance. We're going to be calling something like, mo.orders. And so to get Mo's ID, that's going to be self.id. And that's so where the bartender ID equals self.id, comma. And that should do it. Okay? And then, what do we want to return? We want to return, these are my records. What are they records of? These are my order records. And then we can, for order record, in order records, do something like, build from record. And then pass through what am I returning? Order, comma, order record. Okay? So you can return this, and then that means, what does that mean? Well, you'll have to import this. I think I have it in the init file. Okay? So you'll say from API.models, right? Because everything's relative to this console file. From API.models, and it's defined here on init. So from API.models, import order. I think that's, or you could just do, I think the way we did it previously was import API.models as models, and then here you'll just do models.order. I think that should work. We'll see. And I'm happy to review this again. So we'll do Python 3-i console. We will, find all our bartenders. I need to pass for the cursor. These are my bartenders. Then we get back the first one. That'll be Mo. And now I can do Mo.orders, pass through the cursor, and now it breaks because the build from record is not defined. Sorry about that. From api.lib.orm import build from record. Let's try this one more time. I'll just copy this, exit this, and then put this actually in the console. So we'll have get the bartenders, get the first one, ask for the orders. Right, let's just see if that works. So here we have Mo, right? And if I do mo.orders, let's see if that works. I'm missing the cursor. That's fine. Mo.orders, here's the cursor. There we go. Okay, so what happens here? Mo.orders gets called. Let's just make sure it makes sense. Here's Mo's orders. Let's do Mo's orders. Let's look at the first one, .dunderdict, right? And this makes sense, right? This is bartender ID is 1, and that's probably Mo's ID as well, right? So this lines up. And then how did this work? We'll select all from orders where the bartender ID is self.id, right? Select all from orders, where orders.bartenderID is Mo's ID. Okay, so that's how you can begin to write this like has many query. Can an instance method call a class method? Yeah, it can. It kind of can. For example, like when would you do that? Like maybe what you're thinking, Conwell, is like, oh, well, maybe I can do something like, maybe there's a class method that's like order, like a typical class method in ORMs is like find by, so you could write something like a class method that's like def find by the like bartender ID. Again, this is a class method because you don't know who the bartender is or which order you're talking about when you ask this question, right? So this would select all from orders where the bartender ID, and you'd have to pass through the ID, where the bartender ID, orders.bartender ID equals that bartender ID, like question mark, right? The ID that you pass through here, and then maybe what you do, like, so how would this is a class method, and then potentially what you could do is here you could say, okay, well, what are all the orders of this bartender? There are those where I can actually just use the order class dot find by bartender ID and pass through self.id, right? Pass through this bartender's ID. So that would be an example of using an instance method to call class. Sorry, that felt a little confusing, but that is accurate, I think. Okay, so yeah, you can do it, right? You can always kind of call different methods. Right? They're just tools for you to use. All right, I feel like that's pretty good in terms of me talking. Happy to answer other questions. Let me see what other questions there are. Okay, static methods versus class methods. Yeah, you can check that out. So let me deploy some of this. So this is the Foursquare Class Methods Lab, right? You can look at that. You can look at the class methods reading and then go onto this lab. And then you can see we didn't do has one, but I think you can, use the reading to help you with that. Circular imports we talked about, then has many, and then finally this should take you maybe a little bit of time. The Foursquare ORM Relations Lab. We'll see how far you get before I deploy that. All right, cool. So one thing I think that's confusing is, if you look at so what we do is, I think we connect to this Foursquare test database, right? But if you look at the Foursquare test database, and do something like select all from venues, right? There's nothing in here. So how the heck, how are we going to actually like get some data back, when we call our method or whatever? So the way this works is, let's say we're running this test. We'll do the test find by venue ID. Well, remember, we have a fixture here, right? Build venues. And so this is going to get called first. And then what we do is, right, we clean up our table, basically, right? This says drop all tables. This is actually a bit of a misnomer, meaning I chose the wrong name for this. Because what this really does, if you look at it, is it calls drop tables. But really what this does is I don't know why I call it drop tables. It should be called drop records. Because what it does is for every table you pass through, right, go through each table name called drop records. All this does is delete from, right? So it deletes all the records in the database. So the first thing we do is just like make sure like our database is clean, meaning we don't have any records in it. Then we create a new venue instance, add some data to it, right? We give it this name, give it this Foursquare ID, and then we save it. Remember the save method calls an insert into. So this is where the venue is actually persisted, right? Is when we call save. And then this is the second one, right? The second venue. And then finally we yield to the test, call find by Foursquare ID, and then we drop it, then we delete everything. So the only time you're actually going to see something in the database is kind of like here, really, during the test. And then things get cleaned up again. We delete everything. So if you want to see that, the way that you can do that is you can put, in the venue class, you can define a method, right, called def find by Foursquare ID. And let me just make sure I have the right thing. It takes the ID and the cursor. So self ID cursor. If you want to do class, that works for me. And now you can put, you put a breakpoint here. And and we should probably make this a class method, right? At class method. Cool. So now what's going to happen? We'll get out of our out of Postgres, and we'll do type ls. Our tests are probably here, right? This is where the test venue is. So do pytest test venue.py, and that will, right, drop our tables, create our 2 instances, save them, hit my test, find by Foursquare ID. That will call this method and then hit my breakpoint. Okay. So I run it, and you can see we're now in my breakpoint. So we're right here. You can take a look. Like class is the venue class. ID is that ID 1234, right? And the cursor is, the cursor object. So now you can start to write this out. Query equals. Okay. Select all from venues where the Foursquare ID. How do I know it should be the Foursquare ID? Because that's what my test is telling me, right? We create this Foursquare ID, set it as 1234. Then I'm passing this 1234 value. This probably should be checking that column in the database. Okay. So where the Foursquare ID equals %s because it's Postgres, and then we want to do cursor.execute. I'm going to do something wrong on purpose. Query, and let's do cursor.fetch all and return. Well, let's actually just write this. We'll do cursor.fetch all. So this is executing my query, and actually we should pass through the ID, right? We should pass through the ID that's coming through here. So the 1234, we're going to pass that through to here, and I need to make it a tuple, right? And now return everything. So now let's exit and run the test. And this says none type has no attribute name, right? So why is that? So you have to think about, read the, I know a lot of you know this, but you have to think about why is this test giving you back this error message? So it's because, right, this is the wrong kind of data, right? It's calling .name, and it's expecting this to be a venue instance, I think, but instead it's none. So then the question is, well, why is this thing returning none? Right? It's because we don't have a return value here. So now we'll do this. Run the test, and you get the same thing. List object has no attribute name. So it's well, why is this? So why is that happening? Well, it's because it's getting back some sort of return value from here, and it's calling .name on it. If you're not quite sure, why, what this thing is, why is it getting back a list? Remember, you can just put breakpoints everywhere. So, we can put a breakpoint here in the test, in test venue line 34. And maybe that's my big point is just remember you can put breakpoints everywhere. So we can put a breakpoint here. And it's when you're confused about something, just look, right? Use a breakpoint to take a look. You don't have to think too hard. The breakpoint will tell you the answer. So the question is, why is this thing coming back with the wrong thing? Let's take a look at what venue is. Venue is a list, right, of tuples. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to actually have this be returned in an instance. So let's do this. Let's say we get back a venue record. I know this is wrong. And then we will build from record, right? So I want to turn the tuple into an instance. So do build from record venue and then venue record. Okay? And then I'll return this. So remember, what does build from record do? Well, build from record takes, a class name. So that's this venue the venue class, and then it calls venue.columns on it, so that's these things. And then it zips that together with the record, right, with the tuple, to create a dictionary. Then it creates an instance of the class, so that would be like a venue instance, and assigns that dictionary to be the dunderdict, and then finally returns the object. So all right, so we're feeling like confident. So we'll run this, and it breaks, and it says venue class object. So it seems right. Like, why would a venue object have no attribute name? That doesn't make any sense, right? Because if it's a venue object, it should have an attribute called name. So again, we use our old trick, which is not to think, but rather just to look. So put a breakpoint here, and run this. And now, if I look at what venue is, okay, it's a venue object. That's really good. That's what we want. Let's do the dunderdict. Okay, this is weird, right? Because we have a dictionary here that has ID, and then, like, what is this? It's a tuple, actually. It's like all of our values. This is a very weird, right? We basically have a dictionary that has a key of ID and has a value of all those tuples. So why is that happening? Like, and maybe the better question is where, or like what is causing that error? Probably. So it's broken, obviously, by the time we get to here. Let's go back to find by Foursquare ID. So we execute it, we get back a record, and then it's probably happening somewhere here where we call build from record, right? And then let's put a breakpoint. We can put a breakpoint kind of like at the last line in this function. So again, even our library, we can put a breakpoint in here too, just to look around. So let's do exit and then run it again. So now we are in orm.py, line 8, so we're right here. And now let's look around. So I generally, like, we can look at what record is. So what's record? So this is our problem, right? Is that record is actually a list of tuples. And what we're doing here in the next line is we're zipping together, right, our columns, class.columns, with the columns. But if you zip that together with not the tuple itself, but a list that has one element, right? It's a list with one element. That's going to zip together with only one of the elements here. So that's going to match ID with this whole tuple, right? So our problem is we're passing through a list here instead of a single record. So now we have to fix that. So that's because we're using fetch all right here. So we need to use fetch one. And now this seems better, right? So we can maybe put a break. Let's just put a breakpoint here. This is our venue. So just put a breakpoint before we return it. And take a look again. And let's just make sure we remove our. Yeah, there is a breakpoint here. It's okay, we'll keep it in. So we'll run test venue. What will that do? It will be about to run my test, but call the fixture first, clean up the mess, create an instance, create a second instance, save them both to the database, then yield to my test, call venue.findByFoursquareID, pass through the ID and a connection to the database, call the method, perform the select statement, select it, get back only one this time, build that. That seems better. So let's make sure we'll run it. And now where are we? Line 8, orm.py, line 8, and build from record. So go there, line 8. And now you basically want to look again. What are my inputs? So we have the venue, and now if we look at record, this time it's different, right? It's just a single tuple. And this time if you look at the attributes, it's probably better too. This seems a lot better, right? ID 64, venue ID, blah, blah, blah. If you continue, now where are we? Now we're back in venue.py, line 26. So we hit our next breakpoint. And now we can look at this. What's venue? Venue.dunderdict. Okay? Right? This looks good. So if I call venue.name, right, it gives me back Lowe's Tacos Outpost Store. And that's what my test is going to do. It's called venue.name. And we're good. Right? And we pass. So then we just remove all the breakpoints. And feel okay. So, the overall point is, okay, like everything starts from the tests, really. Like the setup starts from the tests. And like the first step is really to read and understand the tests. In order to do that, one, you can read, but two, you can also, put breakpoints in here to like verify, right, and check your understanding. Or you can look at, all right, what's this first venue? What's the second venue? You can put a breakpoint in here if you want, right? Right, to make sure like this setup makes sense. And then you can put a breakpoint inside the method. Take a look again at all the inputs. You can even start coding, from your console once you hit the breakpoint. And then same thing, like, okay, we got some weird stuff, like where identify that, and then could put a breakpoint in our ORM library as well to see what's going wrong and check the inputs here as well. Like, I'm telling you this and spending time on this because I want you to follow this process, right? Like this is coding, right? They're like, you happen to be using this library and you'll become more familiar with it, and like these things will seem more familiar, like easier for you. But this is really practice in working with other people's code, and in doing that, you're always working with something somebody else wrote and that you're not familiar with, and so it means like developing these techniques, of just looking and figuring stuff out. Yeah, exactly. Right. Cool. Does this help? So you just go step by step. Like, it's really just a practice, and it's as simple as breaking things down, and figuring out where is the error occurring. Does everything look good here? Okay, hit the next breakpoint. Does everything still look okay? Okay, maybe not. So now we have to narrow down where are things going wrong. Okay, and that starts with the tests, with understanding the tests, and then following the test to your code. Other questions about, I don't know, any of this? Cool. All right, I'll let you